All right, record button has been pressed. You are now all on the record. Okay, back to the sharing. Okay, so we have 3 legacies of AA. Oh my God! All right. But before we go there, let's just again remind ourselves who we are. We read something every time in a meeting. This is our preamble. We are a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. And that's basically service. Everything that is service is nothing else but that second part of our preamble. Help others to recover from alcoholism. And this is a vital element of why we do service. We don't do service for any other reason, not for power, not for prestige, not for glory, not for money. We do it for only one reason, because we have to do it. It is in our preamble. It is our moral obligation and our spiritual duty to carry this message of recovery to others, because it was given to us, because it was brought to us. And again, we hear 2 things. There is no way we can keep what we have unless we give it away. So the only way we can keep our sobriety, we can keep our spiritual gift, is to by sharing this gift forward. We cannot pay back, but we pay forward. So that's one of the spiritual reasons why service is so important and why we have to be involved in service. So again, I thank you for your commitment here, because this gift cannot be kept for a few. It has to be given to everybody. And anybody who does service actively would tell you how wonderful that experience has been. I'm going to skip sometimes some things here. This is our logo. This was the logo that was originally designed. Historically, we have always identified Alcoholics Anonymous with this logo. Unfortunately, we have lost the trademark for this logo. We never trademarked it. We never registered this logo ever. So we actually do not have this logo anymore in this form. But we still use it in many ways. It kind of depicts our whole. These are the 3 legacies of AA. The base of the triangle, the foundation of our recovery, the foundation of our legacy is the recovery. The left-hand side of the triangle is unity, and the right-hand side of the triangle is service. We are told the suggestions for achieving personal recovery are using the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's how we recover. We recover from a hopeless state of mind and body. And today's workshop is not about steps. Today's workshop is not about, getting into the recovery-based side of things. But we are saying and reminding ourselves that the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous have been designed for us to lose the obsession to drink and recover from a state of, what was it? I lost my thoughts. Anyway, that's what the foundation of our triangle is, recovery. Then we move into the left-hand side, which is unity. And unity is governed by the 12 traditions. The 12 traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous have been written and given to us so that we can maintain unity and function at a group level. Now, group is the safest place for us. Group is where we all come. We join and enter a group, and we enter meetings, and we choose a home group. And it is in this group that we flourish. It's where we learn how to live and learn how to stay sober and learn how to grow. So we have to be unified here. We have to find unity in this group. We also need to remind ourselves that these traditions were not written overnight. The traditions were released to the fellowship in 1950. 14 years after AA was formed was when the traditions were finally accepted in their current form, and they were accepted by the conference in Philadelphia in 1950. And it took a lot of convincing. There was a lot of resistance. There was a lot of discussion around the traditions. So the traditions have been, as they say, drawn from the experience of the early pioneers and the early people who did the work in AA and kept AA growing. And they faced the most amount of problems. So they learned from their mistakes. And they have created this set of 12 traditions for us to not make the same mistakes again and again, so that we can accept them and learn from them and grow from them. The service, there are 12 concepts of world service that have also been defined. The 12 concepts were written and accepted by the conference, the fellowship in 1962. So that's 12 more years later. So now we are talking about close to 26 years. 26 years since AA has been formed and found to be effective. 26 years later, the concepts have been accepted by the fellowship and have now gone out into production or into print, and now they are being used in the how to deliver service and carry the message. I don't know how many of you are. There are a few in this session today who are more than 26 years sober. I am not. Imagine, I mean, those of you who are less than 3 years in this group today, try to imagine you being in AA without the big book or anything. There was no big book. There was no program. There was no literature. You just had some Oxford group related material, which was being handed out, and it was coming from very strong Christian biblical principles. And there was a lot of you can't do this, you can't do that. It was a temperance society, and they did not have the kind of steps we had. They had a very high, strong moral way of doing things, and that was the only information available at that time. Those of you who are less than 15 years sober, think of it as being in AA without any traditions. No traditions. That means you could have fights, you could have arguments, you could start endorsing things around, you could prevent some people from walking into ASS just because I don't like you, or because you are from a different ethnic background, or you are gay, or you are not rich enough, or you could actually have crazy. You could start using your money to advertise. You could start taking logo endorsements on your in your meetings, and have Philips at the background and say they are sponsoring our meetings. So think about it. It's crazy. If for 15, 16 years of Alcoholics Anonymous existence, they didn't have traditions. And they learned so many mistakes through that these things became so vital. And then again, assume, just like I can today imagine, that I am nearly 19 years sober, and there are no service concepts. There is no structured service. There is no way to know what is the group. Many of the questions you guys are asking today, there were no answers to it. How do we carry this message? So this is really, really vital for us to understand that we today are in such an amazing position to have been given this, and we take it for granted, and still, of course, we fight and we have so much disagreement, and we can't agree on some simple things. But somewhere under this all, there is some beautiful things that have been given to us and are already existing. Otherwise, we would not be sober. We wouldn't be here. So I think just a moment to reflect how amazing this whole movement has been. This is on the left-hand side. You will see is the service manual. This is I think the last version of it, the 2018 version of it, 2018 to 2020 edition. So I think there's nothing been after this. Inside this, and this is downloadable, and you can download it, and I have it available. Anybody who wants to, I can share it with you. If you are in service, you need to have a copy of this. You need to have gone through it. If you're a GSR or a treasurer, or you're doing service at any level, you need to understand this book. It is a treasure house of experience and explains in black and white everything that you need to know about service. It's literally black and white. It's literally written there, including like GSR should have 2 years of sobriety, and he should be this kind of a person, and he should have done this, and his responsibilities are this, and his tasks are this, and his role is this, and he links to the world service like this. Treasurer, this. They have given you templates of how to do your accounting and how to report your accounting inside it. So it's just like a complete manual. So people, we don't talk about it, we don't discuss it, but it's available. On the right side of the screen, you will see the last World Service Meet report that was done in Dublin, South Africa. The World Service Meeting happens every 2 years. and it happens once in New York and once in some other country outside America. The last time was here, and the next one will probably be back in New York now, whenever times and things permit. We'll talk a little bit about this a little later, about service meet and how that works. Rajesh asked me a question a little while ago. What is service? And what is AA service? What are types of AA service? And here is just a little description. I don't know if all of you can read it, so I'm going to kind of go through this a little bit. The basic service of AA is to carry the message. This is what our fellowship does. This is our principal reason and aim and main reasons for existence. AA is not just a set of principles like a program of 12 steps or 12 traditions. It is actually a society of alcoholics in action. We do some work. We go out of our way to carry this message. We must carry this message, else we can wither, and those who haven't been given the truth may die. So AA service is anything that helps us reach the fellow sufferer, ranging all the way from 12 step itself, going, two of you or two of us going to somebody's house. We have been invited to their home. Say there's a man in the bed. He's just coming out of detox. He's in a bad shape. He's been having so many problems. Can two of you guys from Alcoholics Anonymous come and talk to him, and maybe you can help him? That's the basic ingredient of the first 12 step, called the purest form of service. One alcoholic talking to another alcoholic, knees to knees, eyes to eyes, with the big book in your hand or a message of recovery on your lips. You go and you share your experience, strength, and hope with the sober alcoholic's conviction of hope that he can give to any dying or hopeless alcoholic, using language that the alcoholic understands. No preaching, no teaching, no giving him advice. Just what did I do? What happened to me? And if it worked for me, it may work for you. Just that seed of hope that's behind. And that's nobody has been able to do that. And that's what Bill and Bob did. Dr. Bob did on their, one day into sobriety. They were in the hospital, and that's what they were doing. Purest form of 12 step. From there, you go all the way up to the general service offices, sitting in general service boards, world service conferences, publication houses, a list of more than 150 published literature pieces which are being sold on a global, being translated into more than 100 languages, 72 plus general service offices across the world, more than 150 delegates meeting every year, and to discuss how to better improve the service. So that's like right at the top or bottom, and I'll explain what I mean by that. So service can range from anything. And I think that little thing written in the red at the bottom is really a critical check I think we should all do whenever we talk in business meetings about importance of service. Let's do service. And it's written out here, concerning any given service, we have to ask but one question. Is this service really needed? If it is, then maintain it we must, or fail in our mission to those who need and seek aid. So the only question we should ask whenever we make a plan, hey, let's do this, we should ask ourselves, okay, is that really needed? Will it help the new suffering alcoholic out there who still hasn't got the message? If the answer to that is a clear yes, then we must do it. If the answer to that is a maybe, we should talk and think more and discuss it more till we find an answer, which is a black and white yes. And the answer is no, then it is not needed. We should not do it. So again and again, we will find ourselves, and the history of AA is littered with experiences of grandiose and very ambitious schemes, all well-meaning to do something big and nice, but checked by this little check once in a while that we have to do. Okay, right. Any questions on the three legacies that you might have at this point in time? I'm not following the chat box. If there's something going on out there, Harish and Vijay, I'm relying on you to tell me.
Yeah, I will let you know, Kunal. Thanks.
So I'm just going to pause here for a minute or two. Any questions on the legacies as such? All right, let's continue then. The service structure. So we are now going to talk about mainly two legacies, which is the legacy of unity and the legacy of service, as reflected through the 12 traditions and the 12 concepts. That's what's applicable as far as the service structure is concerned. You might have often heard AA is an upside down organization. And this is what it means by that. Why do we call it an upside down organization? Because usually you have an organizational structure which is a hierarchical pyramidal structure with the boss CEO right on top, vice presidents and directors, general managers, departmental heads, section heads, employees, working class laborers, right at the bottom. It just kind of goes down like that. And who's the boss? The boss and man is on top. So the goal, vision, strategy is defined by the CEO or the board of directors, whatever, right at the top. They decide what's going to be done. Rest of the organization is designed to deliver that vision. They have to work and deliver that vision. They just break down that vision into tasks, into projects, into strategies, and they keep delegating it and allocating it to the different departments. Finance, this is your job. Accounts, your job. Marketing, your job. Sales, your job. So on and so forth. Production, your job. And everybody kind of comes together and does their own little bit right at the bottom, and the job gets done and the company grows. This is absolutely opposite. Out here, you and I as members decide what's going to be done. The groups are the final authority, and the ultimate responsibility is with the AA groups. That means if the Road to Sobriety group, which is some of us home group, we decide this is what we want. For example, we want the Is AA for Me pamphlet to be translated in the language Tulu, which is one of the regional languages of India, and it doesn't exist. We can ask our GSR, Noel, to take this, first take a group conscious, of course, inside the group, and if we all agree that this is vital to us, we have to justify it. We have so many Goans and we have so many Mangaloreans and so on and so forth, and we are not able to carry this message to them because they don't get the look, and so on and so. There's many things. We get this group conscious done. The GSR has to take it to his intergroup. So the group GSR, which is the second level of service up there under the AA group, he is tasked. He's mandated. We are not using the word ordered, but he's basically ordered. He's mandated. It is his obligation to now take the group conscience of the group to the next level, which is the district. We don't have district here. We call it intergroup, but I'll explain that difference later. Takes it to UAE intergroup, and it says the Road to Sobriety group has a motion, has a proposal that this document should be translated, and we request your support on it. Now, of course, if it is a good idea, the area will also feel the need. There would be other groups who would also say, hey, you know what, we also feel the need for this piece of literature to be translated. And so therefore, you would find group conscience, and the decision will be made at the intergroup level, district level, let's say, that yes, we agree. So the intergroup representative, or the district DCM, we call them the district conference member or intergroup member, will now take it to the area assembly as a mandate. And in our case, in a very flexible sense, we call that MERCAA, which is the Middle East Regional Conference of AA, Middle East Regional Committee of AA. It is basically the Middle East. All the countries of the GCC plus a few more are meeting here every year. And MERCAA is then tasked to make this happen. And then MERCAA similarly will take it to the next level, or to send a direct request to the General Service Office, General Service Board, at the World Service Meet, or at the General Service Conference. And we'll get into all that a little later. So what I'm trying to say out here is that the group has decided something. If the group conscience can be achieved, it goes to the next level, down the pyramid, till it becomes approved at the General Service Board, which meets every year actually. And then the publication house of AA will be mandated to print this, to get it translate it, and then print it and make it available. And of course, copies will be available to all of us. So every decision, every task that AA has taken upon itself, historically and in the future, this is how it has been done. Nobody is sitting there in the General Service Office of New York deciding what to do. They cannot. They do not have the authority to do it. They have to wait till the decision comes from the groups via the path defined, the service structure defined, and it becomes a task given to them by the General Service Board. So they are accountable. We'll go a little bit later into the details of that structure right at the bottom there. So this conference that happens every year is made up of delegates from all the groups. Now here's a little unfair business from our perspective, and I'll just throw it in here in the middle so that you don't get confused later on. The General Service Conference is actually, we do not participate there. This is for North America and USA and Canada. 93 delegates from different parts of different areas. The whole USA and Canada has been divided into 93 areas. Delegates from these 93 areas, plus the board, trustees, and the office bearers of AAs, etc., about 150 total people. They meet every year. And General Service Conference is that happens every year. And that's where all this happens. Now, how we can get our voice into that, I will explain a little later. But directly, we do not have a seat at that table yet. And some of the work going on, we'll share a little bit around that a little bit later, is that we definitely will have, but we have an indirect way into that voice, not a direct way yet. But this is the general structure of the Upside Down organization. And I hope I have something here. So this is again a little bit more expanded version of this. It's a little small, maybe on some of your screens, but again, it's nothing else but a reflection of the same flow of decision making from top AA groups, GSR, district committees, area assemblies, and area assemblies is sending delegates to the General Service Conference that happens every year. The Service Conference also has the General Service Board. Now, this is a piece for us. This is where the 21 board members or trustees of Alcoholics Anonymous are sitting. 14 of those are alcoholic members who have been nominated from within their fellowship. 7 of them are non-alcoholic trustees. They are not alcoholic. They are friends of alcohol. They could be a prominent philanthropist. It could be a judge sometimes, it would be just a writer or a journalist who has been a friend of AA. So AA chooses trustees from outside the fellowship who help give us the balance that we need. Sometimes helps us see things a little bit more practically and brings an outside perspective into our decision making. So they have a strong voice. So basically, there are 2:1 ratio between non-alcoholic and alcoholic. So 21 total trustees. So this General Service Board, they also rotate. They have a 6-year term, if I'm not wrong. They have a 6-year term, each member, and they don't all rotate off at the same time. There's a kind of a floating rotation principle behind it. I'll try and explain it a little later. But this board is actually the custodians of everything that AA has. So the copyright of our literature, the traditions, the money that we have all collected, everything is actually not owned, they are actually under the decision-making guidance of the General Service Board of Trustees. There are 2 companies that AA has. One of them is the AA World Service, is the General Service Office, and then there is the Grapevine Office. Grapevine Office is the magazine and newsletter of AA, and they also are a full-fledged commercial entity which publishes newsletters and Grapevine. Some of you may have heard of it. It is the AA newsletter. And the General Service Office is actually a well-staffed, full-fledged corporate office with general manager and a full range of staff members. And if you look at the committees on the side, They are all the departments that are working on the various aspects of AA's message carrying. The reasons for our service. I'll just read them out quickly if you can't read them. It's finance and budgetary, corrections, literature, nominating, cooperation with the professional community, with treatments facilities, public information, archives, international conventions, audit, compensation, and so on and so forth. So it functions like a full-fledged company. And these committees are meeting on two different sides. One during the conference, and then of course there are the stands which are actually doing the work. So let's not go too much into this right now. If you have some questions, I may be able to answer that. But I just want to give you a flavor of the overall structure, how group conscience is driven from the group members down straight to the board level, and how we therefore are responsible for a lot of the stuff that is going on. There is something in the chat session. Harish, could you help me read that out? I don't know.
Yes, Kunal, there is a question from Rajesh. Okay, he wants to understand what is the demarcation for group conscious decisions that can be adopted at the group level, and if the same needs to be vetted by intergroup or MERCAA or GSB. Also, if the General Service Board caters to USA and Canada regions, does it mean that for key decisions the buck stops with MERCAA?
Demarcation for group conscious decisions that can be adopted at the group level. If the same needs to be vetted to group, no group conscience needs to be vetted by anybody. That's first of all. A group conscience by itself is paramount. Now, here's the funny thing. I think this might explain what I mean, what you're asking. You can only take a group conscience related to yourself. So the Road to Sobriety group cannot take a group conscience or a decision related to intergroup. It can only take a group conscience related to itself, and it can make a motion, or it can make a recommendation, or it can make a, it can task intergroup to do something. So you can only decide for yourself. Now, intergroup also similarly can only decide for itself. So for example, if your task has come to intergroup will deliberate it, and it could get rejected. It is possible it gets rejected. It is not a question of vetting. It is just that your GSR did not have enough support from other GSRs. And therefore, the time has not yet come. And that's what we have to understand, why group conscience didn't happen. If the idea's time had come, other GSRs would have also felt the need for that same idea. And therefore, it would have become a task for intergroup, and they would have also agreed and made it their own group conscience. It would have gone to the next level, and so on and so forth. Similarly, intergroup, for example, cannot mandate to us, to the Road to Sobriety, hey guys, change your timing from 8 to 9:30 to make it 1 hour only, and please don't have it on Fridays because it is clashing with some other meetings. You have to do it some other time. Many reasons, and that's why we have to look at some traditions like autonomy. Every group is autonomous in itself, so nobody can tell us what to do. No other group can also tell us what to do. So the question of whether it needs to be vetted by intergroup or MERCAA or General Service Board, no. It just needs to, shall we say, gather momentum of its own through group conscience. And in that case, it becomes yes, otherwise it can get rejected. That's how that would work. Also, the General Service Board caters to US and Canada. Does it mean that for key decision, the buck stops with MERCAA? Let me answer that later. We'll answer that later. But good question, thanks. Okay.
Kunal, can I just make it simple for my understanding, because I am from the Middle East region, and I, let's say as a newcomer, I walked into AA. I'm into a meeting, it becomes the most important place for me because that's my meeting where I go for my sobriety. And so that's my group. The group conducts meetings. The group has a GSR. GSR is the next level is the intergroup. And from the intergroup level is the MERCAA. So let me stop here, because this is where my Middle East connection is all about AA. I'm not going beyond that, because at the moment I'm not worried about those parts, because I'm learning the steps now. So the steps is the group, the GSR, the intergroup, and the MERCAA, right? And the group group appoints a GSR who represents the group at the intergroup level. So
Yes.
intergroup will have one head who will be representing the intergroup at the MERCAA level.
Two, actually.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so
yes.
much.
So and let me just say here, for just to simplify this, is that at MERCAA, we are trying to find a way to have our voice heard at the international conference and at the World Service Meet. And maybe when we talk about MERCAA, we will discuss a little bit more. And chair of MERCAA is Jabardis here with us, so he may be able to shed some light on the latest developments there. But let's reserve that for a little bit later. Okay. All right.
There is a question. Kunal. There's a question from Chandra
on this globe. Yeah, go ahead.
Chandra wants to know. He says that he has a different experience here with the GSO in India. It clashes with what you have just shared.
Go ahead, Chandra. Would you like to share that? Because your structure in India is definitely different. You have your own GSO out there. So we do not have our own GSO. And but yeah, go ahead and tell us. Maybe it'll help us get a perspective.
Right, Kunal. I heard what you shared. We had an experience here long back. We decided to translate 12 step and 12 tradition into Malayalam local language. And we had made a, DTP copy and given to the intergroup. And the intergroup has taken, at that time, there was no area assembly. The delegate has taken to the general service office. But it was lying there for 6 years without doing anything. But we, the members of Trivandrum, we sent all the things to New York. With all the mails we had sent to GSO India, after 6 months, they asked for a copyright form, all the things, no? Then they had given permission to go ahead with us. So that was an option. That what I wanted to say is that when the GSO or the higher level is sleeping on that, the group can take it directly with the GSO or New York. That's what I wanted to share.
Very good point. And you are absolutely right. And we have had examples in our local experience here too. For example, a few years ago, we were struggling with, where to source our literature from. And according to the AA policy, we are supposed to source it from your nearest zone and, who are the nearest publishing houses. And that would have been UK for us, coming from the Middle East. But because we were in MERCAA and because GSO people were representing and coming and meeting with us, and the team from literature and publishing and translation, the departmental head was sitting with us at the table. He understood our situation and he made us a special approval saying, okay, you guys can source from India directly. Or he would even give you, for example, publishing rights locally. And yeah, so it's very flexible. And you're right, if there is a genuine need and there is a overpowering, urgency, and you can generate the group conscience at your level, local level, to support that, then of course things can be done and things will get done.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Okay, guys. Okay, let me see what else we have.
We have one more question from Rajesh Kunal, and that is what kind of matters can be referred to intergroup or to MERCAA?
Okay, so hold that question. I'll come to it. I think it's time to go there. Let's go here. Okay, so let's look at this in our context. Now we have taken that triangle and we have brought it down to ourselves. So we have the members, then we have the groups, we have the intergroups or districts, but we are calling them intergroups here. We have the area, we have regions, there's regions here, there's the AA board and the GSO New York. I'm simplifying this for our understanding here. So MERCAA is what we are now, shall we say, let's equivalent to the area. I'm not going to call it an area, but it's equivalent to the area in the service structure. We at UAE have an intergroup. But all our other fellow member countries, for example, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Oman, Bahrain, Qatar, Egypt, Iran is no longer with us. I think they have their own GSO, but Lebanon, some of these other smaller countries, the countries are not small, but the AA fellowship there is small. They do not have the number of meetings and the kind of spread we have. UAE has actually got meetings in Sharjah, Al Ain, Abu Dhabi, and Dubai. We have more than 50 meetings a week. We are actually organized in an intergroup for the last 20 years plus. So we are pretty well organized in that sense. Oman, and I was there for many years, has 2 meetings a week in Muscat. That's it. There is no other meeting in the whole country. There was an attempt to start one meeting in Sohar, but it didn't really sustain. Saudi Arabia has meetings in Dammam, Jeddah, Riyadh, and I think even Makkah they tried, but they never organized themselves as an intergroup. They would sometimes send a delegate from Riyadh, mainly usually from Riyadh. Once in a while, somebody from Dammam would come, but they were no longer they were not the unified voice of Saudi Arabia. Same situation with Kuwait, 1 or 2 groups here and there. Bahrain, I don't know what the situation is. William, do you guys have an intergroup? But I don't think you have an intergroup.
No,
you have basically one group. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we have 3 groups now. One meets in Sacred Heart Church, one in Manama American Hospital, and then one in SAR American Hospital. So total English-speaking 11 groups, 11 meetings a week, and then Arabic maybe approximately the same, but we don't have an intergroup as a net.
So
because the same people go all these all English-speaking meetings, members are going to all the 3 meetings.
Right. I understand. So that's what's happening in most of these countries actually right now, even though they have been there for many, many years. Bahrain, Kuwait have had meetings for many, many years. So that's why intergroup really is only something that we have been unique to, and the other countries are operating at group level. They still haven't organized themselves at intergroup level. Now imagine, now at MERCAA, we are sending now, in the last few years, we are formally now sending 2 delegates from UAE intergroup to MERCAA, elected delegates. Earlier, they were not elected delegates. I served as delegate from UAE intergroup to MERCAA, not because I was elected, but because I happened to be the secretary of at that particular time. Kirk was the chairperson of intergroup at that particular time. We were happened to be at the convention, MERCAA convention, and we said, hey guys, you guys know enough about UAE, what's happening in UAE, you guys are the delegates. So last 2 years ago, I think now we have Craig and we have, I think, what's her name? Mel, if I'm not wrong. Buddy, correct me if I'm wrong. But I think Mel and Craig are our 2 delegates from UAE intergroup, formally elected at the last MERCAA meeting to represent UAE at MERCAA. So if you and I want our voice to be heard, we have to convince Noel in our group conscience. Not convince Noel, we have to convince each other. We get a group conscience. Noel that carries that group conscience into intergroup. Out there, we convince all other GSRs from all other groups at intergroup that this is a great idea, we must do this. In which case, Craig and Mel will then carry that group conscience to MERCAA at the next MERCAA business meeting. And out there, MERCAA will be mandated. Now, the question was, what is the separation of duties? Let's say. An intergroup do? I think the answer is in looking at it. What is it that Road to Sobriety can do for itself and doesn't need anybody else to do? That's what Road to Sobriety does. Also, if Road to Sobriety as a group of AA in Dubai and the Caribou Coffee group in Caribou and the Sports City group in Sports City and so on, Little Land group in Little Land and so on and so forth, all the 20 groups in Dubai were to repetitively do the same thing, for example, have a website or have a helpline or have, publish their own little pamphlets, then that would be repetition and unproductive. It would be a waste of our 7 tradition money, which is something that we are not asked to do. So common things, common activities and common expenses and common functions that somebody can do as centrally on behalf of the groups are usually the functions of the intergroup. That's what intergroup does. So typically another important thing that intergroup does is do some of our public information and working with the professional community type of work. So if we have to take the message to the clinics and doctors and press and media and schools and colleges and work with police stations and judges and jails and institutions and rehab centers, that's not something we typically at a group level should be doing. That's something that intergroup should be doing, or a district level should be doing. So that work has been delegated to intergroup. Now, again, some work that MERCAA can do that intergroup cannot do. So that would mean things that are common to the region and not necessarily easy to be done in every country. So for example, if we have to do public information, there is no point in MERCAA doing much of that, because it is different for Bahrain, then it is different for Qatar and different for UAE, and travel doesn't allow us to do that. However, if we are talking about literature translation into Arabic, that's a perfect example of something that MERCAA should do rather than UAE intergroup, because it's Arabic. So the whole Arab world will benefit from that, and that's something that can be taken up as a project at MERCAA level. Yeah. So, and maybe there should be a larger website which allows any visitor to the Middle East or Arabic-speaking world looking for an AA meeting, and therefore he can go into the MERCAA website and choose between Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Oman, Muscat, Qatar, and that's also another way of looking at it. So Rajesh is saying that's very clear. I hope that's very clear. So that's how we decide who does what. And again, remember, everything is by group conscience. If at any given time, at any service structure, somebody feels this is extra, we are not doing this, going back to our earlier definition of what is service, is this really needed? Or if it is, then it has to be done. And if it isn't, then it shouldn't be done. Also, we have to ask the second question, is it really needed to be done by us? Or is there somebody better who can do this more cost effectively, more efficiently, more smartly, more usefully? Then we should delegate it to them, because we are not here for power, prestige, and money. So that's the spiritual principle. Does that clarify? I think anything else around this matter?
Kunal, one question on the MERCAA, the number of countries in MERCAA. How does a new country become a member in MERCAA, or how is that decided? Which country can be a part of MERCAA, or which cannot be? Is there any norms for that, or are there going to be new countries added into the MERCAA, or this is a set limit for the MERCAA?
Right. So that's a good question, and I'm not going to answer it all by myself. I'm going to just kick it off. So I'm a founding member of MERCAA back in 2005, and we were having this convention for the last 2-3 years around Dubai, Muscat, Bahrain, and we were, the GCC countries mainly at that time. So when we had this first idea, it was to make it a GCC-wide setup. But when we had conventions in the GCC, we found we had visitors from Iran, we had visitors from Lebanon, we had some visitors coming in from Egypt from time to time. And then we began to realize, why not? So we opened it up and we called it the Middle East. So it became wide enough to be Middle East, broad enough to be Middle East. We have to remember one more thing here. There has to be, so AA is present in many countries, but not in all countries. So that means there are countries, especially in our part of the world, there are many countries where there is no AA, Arabic-speaking countries, Sudan, or I don't remember. Maybe I should ask Bertie to come in here and comment a little bit on. He's doing some work and getting some new members in. So Bertie, if you're there, you're welcome to come in and tell us what's going on with MERCAA and how you're bringing in new members. What's your philosophy there? Is he there?
I think meanwhile we can take another question.
Okay.
Chandra says there are 20 groups in UAE. Why don't you have more than one intergroup?
I have a feeling we are getting there. I have a feeling we'll get there, especially with with Abu Dhabi and Dubai. Definitely, it seems to be a natural, a division will happen there, and it should, because otherwise Dubai is far more active and is not doing enough justice to Abu Dhabi and other. Sharjah should do its own. Definitely, it is strong enough and has enough members now to be able to do that. So I would definitely recommend and encourage that, and move us into a place where UAE becomes an area and intergroups become citywide. So Abu Dhabi, Sharjah, Al Ain, and Dubai becomes intergroups, and UAE becomes an area. And that way we can actually become more structured, more efficient, and we can give so many service opportunities to others, and it'll be wonderful. So I would definitely look at that.
Oscar's question is, when did MERCAA originate and how did we connect before MERCAA to the GSO?
MERCAA originated in 2005 in the Bahrain Convention. A few of us just sat there together. Crane Pat was there. I was there from Oman at that time. I was not in UAE. Lisa was here from Abu Dhabi. Lisa and Ivan. It was just the brainchild of a few people who felt it was time to put something together. That's it. That's how MERCAA originated. It was very informal. We were not connected to GSO at all before that. We were operating in a complete island. There would be that one-off communication, a letter going to somebody would write a letter to GSO New York and get some clarifications. We were not organized before that. So MERCAA was the first step in getting a formal structure going here. But you guys have also been in the region for a long time. Oscar, you were in Bahrain before me. I don't know if you guys have any other experience around this, but in my understanding and experience, we did not have any connection to GSO at all.
Okay, I have an answer.
Noel, I'll answer your question in a bit. Go ahead, Arish.
I have an answer to my question privately from Praveen. Praveen saying that any country in the Middle East can be a part of MERCAA. Is that true?
Yes, yes, absolutely, it is true. It's a bit like our third tradition. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. So the only requirement for membership for being in MERCAA is you, as a country, decide, hey, can we be part of MERCAA? And we will welcome them. Absolutely.
All right. Okay.
But of course, if Sri Lanka decides to join MERCAA, we might advise them. Not a good idea. You are not Middle East, so that doesn't make sense. Otherwise, there would be no other reason.
Okay. Noel's question is MERCAA role only related to transfer the AA book into Arabic book, and what else are they responsible for?
I'll just come to that. So just again, a quick summary: country rep, intergroup rep, MERCAA rep, AOSM delegates. This is an interesting thing. We should also talk a little bit about this. AOSM, Asia Oceania Service Meet. Okay, so this is where I have to remind you, earlier I talked about the World Service Conference and the General Service Board, which meets once every year and has all those delegates from USA and Canada, and they are the voice and conscience of AA, and we do not have a link there directly yet. So what we have done since 2007 is that we have linked up with something called the Asia Oceania Service Meet. Asia Oceania Service Meet meets every 2 years. It consists of about 72 countries, all the way from Middle East, we on the east-western edge, all the way to Asia Pacific, which is your Australia, New Zealand included, Japan included. So all the way from us to other end of the world, including Russia. So Russia has two. There's Asia Russia or European Russia. So Russia, half of it goes to Europe side, but half of it also joins us at Asia Oceania. So Australia, New Zealand, Japan, India, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Thailand, Singapore, Pakistan, all the countries in between Asia is there, Mongolia, and so on and so forth. Theoretically speaking, 72 countries. Practically speaking, 15. We have actually had no more than 15 delegates actually coming there. Most of the strength is coming from 3 or 4 large communities. When we say communities, we mean countries. Australia, New Zealand, Japan, India. These 4 are strong AA countries. They bring a lot of experience and a lot of service experience as well as funding. So their contributions to AOSM are strong. We started with them in 2007. We became a full-fledged delegate member in 2009. And since then, we've been sending 2 delegates from MERCAA to AOSM regularly. As of now, I think Bertie is our second term delegate. And somebody, I don't know who I don't know who the first term delegate is. There's a second delegate, but Bertie is now finishing his term, I think, next year. I have had the opportunity to be a delegate twice, and I was also chairperson of AOSM once upon a time in 2015. So AOSM is not a formal service structure. It is a service meeting that happens to collect the service experience of all these participating countries, share experiences and knowledge and best practices, and kind of learn from each other. They meet for 4 days. It's a big, long meeting, but it doesn't have a decisive voice as such. It cannot make a decision. It cannot tell the General Service Board to do something. It is not linked to the World Service yet. So while every year there is a World Service Conference where the actual work and decisions are being taken, something else has been started called the World Service Meet. Because AA has recognized that there is world beyond USA and Canada, and AA is actually growing very fast in the rest of the world, there needs to be a way to hear their voice. So there's created something called the World Service Meet. And at this World Service Meet, delegates from all the 72 GSOs, including India, for example, including Iran, for example, we are not there yet, but there are many countries who send their delegates to the World Service Meet, and so does USA and Canada. They just become equal there. And at that World Service Meet, a lot of discussions happen, and a lot of recommendations are made. And those recommendations are taken by somebody called trustees at large. So these are 2 people who are delegated from the General Service Board to attend the World Service Meet as trustees at large, and they hear everybody, and they take away, and they prepare their own report, and they submit it at the World Service Conference on behalf of the World Service Meet. But it is not yet a formal link and an authority and a mandate yet. Now, there's a lot of work and discussion going on about why we are not part of the service conference, because after all, the numbers are actually much bigger here. Funding is becoming important. So there's a lot of things going on. It is not easy to change things in AA because it requires 2/3 majority. And that, I guess, we have not yet achieved. But it's, I think, in my opinion, just a matter of time before we get that linkage. So this is what I wanted to say earlier, that our voice goes from our group all the way up till MERCAA, and then it goes to AOSM. And at AOSM, it is deliberated, discussed, and understood, and incorporated in the world. So from AOSM, there's a delegate who is sent to the World Service Meet. And it's usually somebody who is already on the World Service Meet. For example, Australia or New Zealand or Japan or India, it could be. Because AOSM doesn't have a seat at the World Service Meet, but many of its participating member countries, especially the big ones, they have a seat at the World Service Meet. So they do AOSM a favor by reading the AOSM report at the World Service Meet. So it's a kind of an indirect, long way of reaching the General Service Board, but it's a beginning. We only started a few. In the history of AA, 10, 15 years is nothing, as you can probably imagine. So this is going to take a little bit more time, but I think a lot of people are very active and are working towards making this happen.
What is the AOSM delegates have, that first term and second term? What does it represent?
Yeah, so it means basically continuity. There has to be continuity. So it's a 4-year term, because AOSM happens every 2 years. So you attend 2 AOSMs. Every delegate attends 2 AOSMs. So if I am the delegate, for example, now I will go with the previous delegate, and I will go as a first term delegate. Then I will do some work in AOSM, and then next 2 years later, when the next AOSM comes, I will go again, this time as second term delegate. The guy who was the second term delegate has finished his term. He rotates off, he goes away, and somebody new is elected, let's say Bertie. Bertie comes with me as first term delegate. He shadows me because I've already had some experience from the previous one. And then he becomes second term delegate 2 years later. I finish my term and I go away. So that way, continuity and rotation happens between 2 delegates. And that's how it happens at World Service Meet also. and it happens at the board level, general service board, so that everybody doesn't just disappear because their term gets over and everything is lost. Continuity of what's going on this is one way of protecting it.
So is it the similar at intergroup level and MERCAA level also?
At MERCAA level, yes, not at intergroup, yes. But MERCAA level, yes. What we try to do, we try to have an alternate chairperson who shadows the chairperson, and then when the chairperson finishes his term, the alternate chairperson steps into the chairperson's role. He just has to be validated. It's not an automatic entry. He still has to get the group conscience, but usually he's given it because he, after all, has the experience.
Okay. There's a question from Tina. What is being done to start AA in Pakistan? According to Bertie had told her that they were trying, but nothing has been done. She says Pakistan needs AA desperately.
Okay, so that's, for example, a great question to be asked at MERCAA level or at AOSM level. But at UAE intergroup level, we cannot and should not be trying to answer that question. Now, and that's a wonderful question, because what you should do is ask your GSR as a Pakistani in Dubai, concerned Pakistani AA member. You should ask your GSR, I have a question for MERCAA. What is being done for Pakistan? Or I have a question for AOSM. What is being done in Pakistan? So he will then take it to intergroup will take it to MERCAA will take it to AOSM, and AOSM should come back with an answer, and the flow of the answer should be the same. It will come back via MERCAA to intergroup to the group via GSR. But whether we can answer that question, no. Because Bertie today is AOSM MERCAA chairperson, he may have some personal experience. He can share that with you on a personal basis. But it's not really something that an intergroup or group should discuss. Yes, Oscar, the MERCAA is recognized now by GSO and is recognized by UAE intergroup. Yes. So we are definitely, we have been given a lot of permissions by GSO to do a few things which are outside the book, so to say. For example, procure literature from India. And, we are even talking to them about, setting up a GSO here. I think Bertie has been involved with that. So yeah, we are recognized by GSO. But again, we don't need to be recognized by GSO. GSO doesn't have authority on us. The structure is upside down. So it's not as if we need their permission or anything. We can be just ourselves, and they have to recognize us by if we send delegates and if we fulfill the criteria of being an A group. If we are following traditions and we are electing our delegates and we request a seat there, they will have to give a seat to us. They will give us a seat there. Yeah. Okay, let's move on a little bit. Okay, let's skip all this. I think I've covered a bit here. This is a question that Noel asked. What is it that MERCAA does? This is the current main activities that MERCAA does. It does the MERCAA convention, which is the annual Middle East AA convention. It is done usually in rotation, or usually by countries who are willing to put up their hands and who can share, who can take on the responsibility of actually organizing and conducting an event of this kind. Now, Oman, for example, has been trying a couple of times, but they are a small, 15 years ago, I was in Oman and we did a fantastic convention. We were a lot of people there at that time. We had all the support to do it. But since then, Oman has dwindled and become smaller. So therefore, they are today finding it a struggle. Kuwait does it quite well. Bahrain does a great job of doing a convention. They have often been, so Dubai and Bahrain, or rather, let's say, UAE and Bahrain have been the two most frequent because we have the manpower and the experience to hold conventions. Kuwait has done it quite a few times. Qatar has done it a couple of times. Last time it was done in Lebanon. They did it there. I didn't go. I believe it was a wonderful experience. Oman has done it a couple of times. So yeah, I'm not sure where the next one is being planned, but yeah, it's usually in one of these countries. So that's one big thing that MERCAA does. It does website and translation. So yes, the big book has been translated officially now. So that's no longer the project. The project now is about finding out what other literature should be translated. So there's a lot of literature out there. We have to prioritize and choose. 12 and 12 traditions, I think, is ongoing. Daily reflection is an project. Pamphlets, are being translated because, am I an alcoholic, 44 questions, some of these very valuable pamphlets are important to have. So that's one of the things that they are doing. One of the important things we were trying to do at that time was, so making sure we can source literature, especially in the Indian context, because so much literature is coming. It's much cheaper from India to bring literature from India. Just to clarify here, a GSO has the copyright and the license to publish its literature, and the World Service Conference gives it that license. So they are only allowed legally to sell the literature that they print and publish in their own country. So that's why if India were to sell us literature, it would not be directly, strictly legal. They do not have the license to do that. They have the license to print and publish and sell in their own country languages, whatever language they do. So we had to obtain a special bypass for that because we have such a large Indian population inside the MERCAA countries. So they accepted that. The other thing that MERCAA does is organize international workshops. So they will bring in a speaker and they will, and again, and I'm sure there are some questions have come up about who is the speaker, why this speaker, why not the other speaker. Everything we have to remember is done by group conscience and should be done by group conscience. And if it is not done by group conscience, it can be questioned. So the decision on which workshop to do, when to do, how much to spend on it, who will do it, is actually something that MERCAA should be doing and seeking inputs from all the member countries, intergroups, and it can come down to you. For example, it should typically be MERCAA business meeting is coming up. MERCAA is now inviting nominations for speakers for 2021 workshops, international speakers. Who should we call? Should we call Bob D or should we call Paul H? And this nominations and things should go through the system, should go through the process, through the GSR, and a good conscience should be reached. The truth is, and the reality is, it's not been done. And it is usually done very ad hoc. And it has been, hey, you know what? I went to this workshop in USA some years ago. He was wonderful. I recommend him. Because nobody has any other information and knowledge, it has sometimes been accepted. And then later on, we find out, oh, that was not a great idea. And some dispute can happen. So we must also fix these things. We must also tolerate some of these things. I don't know what the fine line out here is. I guess the main lesson for us all should be, we must not repeat mistakes. We must learn from lessons earlier and at least try to move towards something that is meaningful and makes sense and get group conscience and all these things. These are sensitive matters. We all know that anyway. Our experience has been that. So did I answer that question?
There's another question from Oscar. Does MERCAA send anything official as to what they are doing to anyone around? How do we know as a group?
Good question.
What is MERCAA doing?
Many times MERCAA has tried to set itself a mandate to create a newsletter. Initially, it was every 6 months we'll send out a newsletter. Then they said, no, that's not working out, not practical. Let's send out an annual newsletter. The truth is that MERCAA doesn't have the service capacity to do all this work. It is just a handful of people who are holding the fort up in MERCAA. Really, one of the benefits of doing workshops like this, and what was done a little earlier, is to really generate this interest so that there is more and more people ready to do the work. If there is nobody going to do the work, there is no point in, taking a decision and planning something, but then nobody can do it. So that's my understanding of why MERCAA has not been able to do strong, visible, and meaningful things, and they are stuck with a few same old things going on and on. I definitely hope this changes. I would love to see it change. Okay. All right, this was about AOSM. Let's forget all this. Just a quick thing I will show you here, then we'll go into the home group side because I think we are running on a lot of time here. So ideally speaking, MERCAA and AOSM, they have a charter. They should have a statement of purpose. And this is what it looks like as of now. As of the time I was there. I hope this is, anyway. So it says, this is who we are, this is what we will do, and this is how we will work. We have set ourselves some guidelines. It shall meet every year. It shall do this. It shall have a secretary. It shall have a regional structure. You are eligible to send a delegate. You should actually have an elected delegate. So we have tried to create some delegates, some guidelines out here. There are 4 working committees inside MERCAA, and this is a reflection, a mirror of the working committees at AOSM. So we don't want to do something that nobody else is doing. The whole idea is, what is the world doing? What is AOSM doing? What is our neighboring countries doing? 72 countries are working on what? Why don't we work on those same big 4 things? Because eventually the 4 things are the same. So these are the 4 things that MERCAA and AOSM are working on: policy, admissions, and finance. What this means is, who can be part of MERCAA? What is our admissions policy? What are the other policies around MERCAA? What can we do? What we cannot do? And how are we going to manage the money that we receive from the groups and the intergroups and so on and so forth? How are we going to spend it? So that's like an administrative department inside MERCAA and AOSM, which worries about these kind of things. Another committee that works inside MERCAA and AOSM is working with others and public information. It is basically carrying the message. So we have to learn, what is India doing to make its message more easy to be, at the vernacular level, at the Malayalam level. Maybe we can learn something for it and do it in our labor camps out here. So committees like this are focused on seeing how message is being carried in our part of the world or in different parts of the world. And the third one is about literature publishing and translation. This is self-explanatory. It's about seeing which literature needs to be published in which language and translated, and how the translation committees are going to work, and so on and so forth. And the fourth one is about site selection and the agenda for every meeting. So MERCAA is a meeting. It meets every year. AOSM is a meeting. It meets every 2 years. So where will it meet? How do we select the site? What is the impact of an AOSM if it is held in so-and-so country? And what should be the agenda of that meeting? Remember, it's a 4-day-long meeting, full day. So it's a huge agenda. So there's a lot of talk that goes on. So it's important that the agenda is also agreed upon. So these are the 4 broad areas where MERCAA and AOSM are working in. And we should, from here, the 2 main things for us as people, members, as working with others and PI, and literature publishing and translation. The rest of the 2 are actually more administrative in nature. Each committee has a composition. I'm not going to skip all this. I think this is not important at this point in time. These are the service positions in MERCAA. This is important because all of you are eligible for this. You should apply for this, or you should participate in, at least in intergroup and at MERCAA level, so that if not now, a year down the line, you should. So there's a chairperson, there's a secretary, there's an alternate secretary, there's a treasurer, there's an alternate treasurer, there's a regional PI coordinator, public information coordinator, a literature regional coordinator, there's a webmaster, and then there are AOSM delegates who go to AOSM. Usually it is 2 years of minimum sobriety for all the positions except the treasurer. The treasurer has a 5-year sobriety position. If you want to be elected for this, you should be present at the MERCAA meeting, which happens wherever the MERCAA convention is every year. This is something that we can also work with it. For example, somebody else can carry your nomination because there are not enough people who are doing this service. So this is something I wanted to share with you because that's how we will grow MERCAA and make it more meaningful. Okay, let's leave this. Intergroup is a smaller version. I think we've talked enough about intergroup for now. I don't think so. Unless you guys want me to talk a little bit about MERCAA, intergroup, or AOSM, I'm going to stop here as far as the service structure is concerned. I think we have spoken enough on the service structure. Should be clear to all of you what it means, how it is organized, what all the different service levels are supposed to do, how it is usually done, what are the service positions, committees. Any thoughts, any questions, comments? Okay.
Noel has a question. How can he be present at the MERCAA meeting? Does the intergroup send us?
No, the intergroup sends only 2 delegates. So that's the funded portion of a delegate. You as a member are welcome to the MERCAA convention, just like you would go to the wherever the local convention is. Now, if for some reason the next MERCAA convention is in Bahrain, well, you would have to travel there. But you would travel there to get the benefit of the convention as a member of the convention. And then, of course, the meeting happens during the convention. So you would be welcome to sit in the meeting and you can raise your hand, nominate yourself. And of course, there are now questions being asked, can I nominate myself? And those are good questions to ask. And,
yeah,
and
that's
as
the
of
question,
now,
Kunal. Can I nominate myself? Or
as
sorry
of
to
now, yes, you
interrupt you.
can.
What my question was?
As of
Yeah,
now,
just
yes, you
enter
can.
to the meeting and say, okay, so
You
then
can.
our intergroup over here, UAE, I don't have to, I mean, how will I represent? They'll say, who told you to go there? Do I have
Very
to
valid
be
questions. And
sent by the intergroup or what is it?
as of now, no. As of now, no. As of now, really, it is very, very open. And, it's been 2 years since I have finished my term at MERCAA. So I don't know what happened at the last meeting, but I think things are still the same. Where basically who's there and who's interested can just raise their hand, and nobody, sometimes there is an election because two people want the same position. Usually the chairperson position, everybody wants that. That's the one that everybody covets. So you might have an
No,
election for that
so the
position, but
question is, Kunal, the
yeah,
question is,
go ahead.
this intergroup over here, suppose I attend a meeting in MERCAA anywhere. I've been to 2, I think. I went to Kuwait last time and I went to Jordan the other time. Okay, I say, I want to be the chair, I want to be the literature or whatever it is. Does Dubai intergroup will have objection on that, or I can just represent myself and say, because I'm going to represent Dubai, right? Or whatever, or
No,
UAE or whatever
no.
it is.
No, you're not representing UAE. The only people who are representing UAE are the two delegates. They are the ones who are
Then,
representing UAE.
so
Now,
on that position, they will just take you from whatever it is, from anywhere. They can just say, okay, you're not from any country. I mean, how does it work?
so as I said, it works kind of weirdly a little bit. And let's get to the guidelines a little bit. So I will be honest and upfront with you.
Okay.
Very few guidelines are in
Thanks,
place.
Kunal.
Whether it is at MERCAA level or whether it is at intergroup level, we actually lack guidelines. And I think if you recollect, those of you who are from the Road to Sobriety group, one of the things I've been putting in the business meeting agenda for the last few meetings, and we have not discussed this because there's no intergroup yet, is the need for us to have guidelines for all. And we'll come to that a little later. But yeah, this has been a sore spot. Many people have questioned it. Where are these nominations coming from? Who is electing them? Why are they becoming delegates? And I think it's very valid. And I think it's a very healthy time to have this conversation and make it right, rather than blame people. Let's make it right.
So MERCAA meeting and MERCAA conventions are two different things.
So the convention is a day long or a 2-day long sharing sessions where we have speakers and fun and banquet and dance evening and music evening and mainly topic sharing. It's a large meeting is a celebration of recovery. So that's a convention. Yeah, if you haven't attended one, you should, and others have, I think. So that's more like a celebration. It's not a formal business meeting. It's just a celebration of recovery, and lots of speakers are sharing on different topics. Whole day long it goes on, and it's a fellowshipping plus, it's a lovely couple of days. Everybody meets everybody, old friends, new friends, and so on and so forth. So it's a very powerful spiritual recovery experience. Newcomers love it usually. They can't believe what they see. MERCAA business meeting happens for 2 hours during one of the days in between. It is in the agenda. And usually only trusted servants and delegates attend that. And that's one of the reasons we don't have enough people going there. Because one of the things I believe we should do is dedicate one day for the MERCAA business meeting before or after, and not combine it with the convention because it doesn't give us enough time. Too many important things are going on. People don't want to break up the sharing sessions and leave that and go for a MERCAA business meeting, which is happening. Usually it is done during lunch hour. A lot more importance needs to be given to it, should be done better.
So the need of guidelines at all levels.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to finish with intergroup, MERCAA, AOSM now. Anything else on that?
Bertie's update on MERCAA, is he there, Bertie?
Is he back? I don't know. Let's ask.
I don't know. Bertie, are you there?
I think he's not actively present. Okay, let me see what we can. Home group. Kim, I don't know if she's still there, but she had asked some time ago, what is a home group? Why home group?
Kim has left.
Okay. But home group is really the group that you choose to be your group, the place where you belong, where your voice is heard. As you have now realized that our general service structure starts with the groups, but you can't be part of all groups. If you want your voice to be heard, then you have to choose one group. And home group is usually the place where your voice, you belong there, and your vote is counted out there. So you are welcome to those business meetings. But if you were to go and suddenly sit in the in the Karibu Coffee business meeting, you might be heard. You would be allowed to sit, definitely. Observers are allowed everywhere, but you may not have a vote there. So your voice will not be heard out there. So if you want to participate in the service structure of AA, one of the things you need to have is your home group. Home group is also not just for business purposes or group conscious purposes. It's just the place we belong. It's just the place where I want to do service. It's also the place, for example, if I stop coming, I have enough friends out there. They say, "Yeah, it's been a long time. Harish ko dekha nahi. Let's give him a call. Why is Harish not coming?" It's a place where they bring you back. Just like what you do, Harish. I mean, you called up this guy for his birthday, that guy for his birthday, because you believe Aziz is a member of this home group. It's his birthday. We have to pull him into this thing, even if he's being careless and he is a little aloof and cut off from us. But it is our home group. He's a home group member, so we have to call him back. So that's why a home group is we all must have a home group. And it's for safety. Because none of us are perfect, and sometimes we have resentments, and we feel we are cut off and we are not loved and wanted enough, and we drift, and that is so dangerous. We can get lost, we can slip and relapse, and then stuff like that happens. So home group is if you don't have a home group, please, whoever's here, get one, and or join us. You're welcome to.
Santosh had a question on the home group because he says he wants to know. He goes to Sharjah, he wants to go to Dubai. Which is his home group? Was Santosh's question.
Well, I can't answer that for you, Santosh. It's really the place where you believe you are more at home. And look, there is no hard and fast rule that you cannot have two home groups in two different cities. I don't think we are going to object because, oh, he votes in Sharjah, so he should not. But if you make it a practice of going to 10 different home groups and putting your vote in 10 different meetings, that would be, everybody would notice it and would have an objection. But if you genuinely believe in your heart, and only you can answer that, if you genuinely believe in your heart, hey, Sharjah group is also my home group and Road to Sobriety group is also my home group, you're welcome to do that. It's your decision. Nobody's going to decide for you. Yeah, and in a home group is where you usually accept service responsibilities and you learn to sustain friendships. It gives us the voting privilege, which is one of the most important things that we as members can get. It is the only way we can make a function and move forward. So this is where your vote is counted. Of course, you have only one vote and also and so forth. This is usually the structure of the service structure within a home group. You have a chairperson for the meeting and a secretary for the meeting. Now, we usually don't have two different. We usually have something called the secretary chairperson. But in larger groups, and maybe we can consider it, in some groups, you have two different positions. The secretary is the guy who opens the meeting, makes sure the door is unlocked, the literature is all set up, the cupboard is unlocked, the lights are on, the switch is on, and the tables and chairs are set up with some help, of course, not all by himself, as Oscar will point out. He needs to have people who will help him with it. So he sets up the meeting, he opens the meeting. In many communities, you will notice that then a chairperson is the meeting is handed over to the chairperson. And the chairperson is usually the person who decides the topic, or he could be the one who starts the sharing for that day, for say like a speaker, or he just conducts the meeting, the readings and all that. And then at the end of the meeting, he hands the meeting back to the secretary and says, "Thank you for giving me a chance to be the chairperson. you can now close the meeting. And the secretary then will finish with the readings at the end. Oh, by the way, he also does the readings at the beginning if that is so. So the secretary and chairperson role can sometimes be combined, which we do in Road to Sobriety. It can also be separated. Yeah, Chandra, your question?
Yeah, Kunal, I have need some clarification on what you said just before, that a person can have two home groups. But my experience here in my Kerala, there was a lot of rifts, quarrels, because some members go to from that day, they say that from today onwards, this is my home group. They come into the business meeting and quarrel, and next day onwards, they go to some other home group, get the service position. So I think that it is better to have one home group, because UAE, of course, there are only 20 groups. What you said, it's their conscience, but it is not a good practice to have two home groups, I think.
I agree with you completely. And the political corruption that has sometimes happened in our service structure, especially humanities, and therefore groups become very, very important. And that's one of the reasons, because home group gives you the vote. So again, as I said, let your conscience, again, you can't bullshit bullshitters, man. So, if Santosh, you have some ulterior motive behind this, we will catch you. Bertie, you want to say something?
Actually, I wanted to say the same thing. I thought we'll talk about it later. Book, Home Group, I've got about 2-3 books on home group. I haven't read anywhere that you can have two home groups. And the reason why they advocate one home group is again because of service positions. And if you want to move on to structured service, it is necessary for you to have only one home group. I mean, you can't be a GSR in one group and be a GSR in the other, or have another service position in the other one. And the ideal way to do service is in one home group. You stick there and keep rotating. Today you are GSR, tomorrow you are treasurer, you are a coffee person, you are a literature person, as much as you can. I mean, till you move on to the district level, I mean, over here, intergroup level. Over here, things are very fast and easy. I mean, you can just go to intergroup and then get it. But otherwise, people do quite a bit of rotations within the group, and then they reach there. Anyway, but each one to himself. In Dubai, I have seen people who call themselves home group members, or rather they take meetings in 2-3 groups. I mean, this is one thing which baffles me totally. How can you take a meeting in 2 or 3 different groups, Anyway, that's what my opinion is. Thank you.
Very valid points, everybody. I completely agree with the theory behind it. Santosh's point was coming from somewhere, I think, a little bit more emotional. But Santosh, I think you've got your answer. You might have to make a choice.
Kunal?
Yeah.
William here. I think during this workshop, when Kushan conducted, this question was asked. And that time, I think so Kushan said that, even if I go to I may go to 2 different meetings, but I will have only vote at one particular which is my home group. So that means home group is only one home group. Wherever
We could do it like that.
There only I'll get. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So, Santosh, if you feel the home group choice is a matter of you wanting to belong, I think the answer is you are welcome to belong to maybe more than one, and if you feel at home in both. But if the answer, if the question is around voting, service positions, and your experience in that sense, then maybe you need to make a choice and stick to one group. If that answers your question, so hopefully that does. Okay.
No, my question was that I started with Sharjah. When I was residing in Sharjah, I used to go to Sharjah, but sometimes I comes to Dubai also. Later, after 2 years, I shifted to Dubai. After that, I come to Dubai only. I feel myself as a home group as Dubai. But is there anything, in the constitution-wise or rule-wise or precedent-wise that once you start there, that is your home group? There's something like that.
No. You can change your home group if that's your question. Absolutely, you can choose your home group and change your home group. Absolutely, whenever you want.
I'm no, I'm Noel. I'm an alcoholic. I just want to come into this because my home group is St. Mary's group, and I am service over there as a GSR, and But I have 311 over here, and we are just 3-4 members, and But just because we have a Silicon OS, small group, and there is nobody over here at times to serve, so I serve over there. But as my conscience, it's all about my conscience. See, I'm a part of my home group is St. Mary's group, but here at times nobody represents because there's hardly 2-3 guys, 4 guys, 5 guys of us because they have a meeting here. So I represent at times, just so that somebody can take if nobody's taking the position to keep the group going, I am a part of it here. So it's my conscience, but from within, I think the whole point is how you feel and you make that you belong to this group from wherever it may be. Yeah, that's your home group. Yeah, it's my own conscience that can clear it. I think that's the point here. It's not about nobody can tell me not to be a member here and there. I think that's no guidelines as such that you have to, that you cannot be, you can be. It's your own conscience that will tell you, okay, this is what it is for me, right or wrong. I know this is what I feel here.
So if you look at point number 4 here on the slide in front of you, it says here, while most AA members attend other groups regularly, the home group is where they participate in business meetings and cast their vote as part of the group conscience of the fellowship as a whole. And as with all group conscience matters, each member has one vote. So that's pretty clear. You cannot vote in multiple home groups.
Yeah.
You can attend meetings, you can even feel strongly and belong in but your vote is one. So just be careful on that side, so that at an intergroup you can't, for example, say, oh, I am GSR of Road to Sobriety group, but I am also representing the 311 group because there's nobody else taking the position, so I'm voting 2 votes in favor of the motion, whatever that motion is. That would not be right. You would have to I think you'll have to make a choice there. Okay, so this has opened up quite a bit of can of worms. Let's give it to, who do you want to come in first?
Thanks. That's good. That's good.
I would like to come in again. Sorry for that.
Sure.
Actually, this topic is quite relevant to us over here. I would like to quote an example over here when it comes to Santosh. A good example over here is Ian. Ian his home group is Sharjah. He participates in St. Mary's, but he doesn't come here and take any service, or he goes to intergroup, votes for us or anything. And like Noel's point is, suppose Ian is here and then we have a meeting going on and the chair doesn't come, we can ask Ian to take the meeting, and there is no problem him taking the meeting on that count, because as it says, you can attend other meetings also. But as far as the vote is concerned, that he will only have in his Sharjah group, and that is very important for your own growth in a structure. Thank you.
We have Chandra who
Thanks,
wants to share his, we have Chandra who wants to share his experience on the home group. If time
please go ahead. Let's finish this round of discussion one by one. Go ahead, Chandra.
Chandra Alcoholic. See, when we started meetings in Trivandrum long back, we are only 4 members. We started a meeting group. Then we thought that we will have another meeting, and we got a place, and we started in another day. It's a Saturday. But the same members goes there. Only 4 members goes there on Saturday, and the other meeting was on Sunday. Then what happened? I read little bit of this home group, the heartbeat of India, and I said, every group should have secretary, treasurer, this thing, that thing. And ultimately what happened, one group was closed. This I would like to share. When we are growing, don't put all this rigidity in the fellowship, except the voting thing. Thank you.
Thanks, Chandra. Thank you.
Thanks, Chandra. Christopher has raised his hand.
I'm an alcoholic. My name is Christopher. I want to share my experience. It is related in India. When I was sobering up, I was a IGR treasurer because there was no member in my group. So I was representing intergroup at all as a treasurer, IGR, and PI also. But we had one group we had formed visiting hospitals. We happened to find one member which was one of the places where there was a group and it had died off. So we revived the group, and we had similar members coming as Chandramohan has said. So we wanted something to come up. So we had one awareness meeting. We got it. What happened? We couldn't hold it for a long time. But the group was represented in intergroup, but nobody could vote and take a decision on that thing. Finally, I think maybe it is stopped or what, I don't know. For 2 years we ran without any formal group function, but the meetings were held because there were foreigners coming to that Navy Nagar group. It's the end of Kaaba. So Taj Hotel and all those people, whoever used to visit us, they used to get in the international directory, so they used to come over there. Formally, we conducted the meeting, but there wasn't such thing like treasurer and all. Whatever money is to come, straight away contribute to intergroup. But there was no formal secretary treasurer like that. That's my experience.
Bertie is showing us something on video. What is it, Bertie? What is it?
Bertie, you have to unmute yourself, Bertie.
It's called Home Group Heartbeat of AA, and truly it is. I think, Chandra, you were talking about this book.
Okay. So let's spend some time. Yeah,
Can I say something?
You will get this.
Can I ask this thing question?
Yes, Noel.
Okay, I remember a couple of years ago, we have in St. Mary's group, we have 3 meetings were going on, right? Trinity was going on, then Friday meeting was going on, and the Wednesday meeting was there, and then they started Sunday, whatever. So once I remember we had planned to have 3 members sent to intergroup. Like, each meeting will have their own chairperson. Like Trinity will have one chairperson, and and Friday meeting will have a chairperson. I mean, to be very honest, then we changed it and we made one this thing. It was basically, I think again it comes to your conscience maybe. Yeah, it was mainly to send people to get votes in intergroup. Yeah, it was nothing basically. So do we really have to have 3, or this is just a question, yeah? Or for us, we have taken one, which is very nice, I feel. But this is just a question, But normally, each meeting should have a person, and that guy goes to the intergroup, isn't it? That's the way it should be, as per the books or whatever, right?
Yeah. So the
what is it
GSR
actually? I just want to clarify this here.
The GSR represents a group. He's the general service representative of a group. A group can have a meeting or it can have multiple meetings. So there is no limit on the number of meetings a group can have. Many groups are same as their meeting, a one meeting, one group entity. Like the Saturday Karibu meeting is a group. The Sunday Karibu meeting is a different group, and the Tuesday Karibu meeting is a different group. They are all meet in Karibu, but they're all 3 different groups. And therefore, they are entitled to send 3 different GSRs. We cannot tell them, hey, you guys should all combine into one and become the Karibu groups with 3. It is not autonomous. We cannot, nor can intergroup, by the way. We, as you said, is our conscience. As a group, are we one group? Is the Trinity group part of us? And if we are, then we send one group. And you are right. Earlier, we had a little political intent, which is not necessarily the most spiritual one. But I think at that time, we were feeling a little outnumbered. And we felt maybe this is the best way to do something. We took a group conscience, mind you. It was not something that one person decided. It was a group conscience. So if it is a group conscience, it's fine. But then group conscience can change also a little later, which seems to have changed. So that's okay. We can live with it.
So on the group,
Thanks,
on the group that can have as many meetings as they want, So they can have one chairperson for all the meetings. That depends on the group. That's an individual group choice, right? That's
Absolutely.
not that if you have 3 meetings, you should have 3 chairs or 6. It's entirely up
No,
to
you
group.
you should have 3 different.
So it's not a
you
group
know,
choice.
naturally
Group cannot
speaking,
decide to,
but it's,
like Noel just said that in Silicon there are only 4 members. Probably they want to have 2-3 meetings a week. Maybe that can be the same chairperson for all the 3 meetings there. That is a group decision, right?
okay. So this is leading into another different type of an argument, and I'll come to that. What is something going on here? St. Mary's group is not a group. R2S is the group. Correct. You are absolutely right, Oscar. Road to Sobriety is the group. St. Mary's Church is the venue. And in fact, our tradition 7 or 8, one of them, which says we do not endorse anything, prohibits us from actually naming a group with a location, because by definition it can seem as an endorsement. So in fact, one of the things our tradition tells us, do not name your group for the location that you are in. You can say it meets at that place, but it is not that group. So thank you for that, Oscar. It's very important, and I think we need to take it to intergroup and remind our intergroup friends that they are things like the Little Lands group is not right. It's not, should not be like that. Caribou should not be named Caribou. It should be given a name. Well, and in the home group booklet, which says how to name a group and how not to name a group. I forgot your question, Harish. What was it?
I said, like Noel just mentioned that he goes to the Silicon where there are only 3-4 members. Let's say that group decides to have 4 meetings a week. One person can chair all the 4 meetings, or ideally it should be that every group has 6 meetings and 6 different people should chair the meeting. Is there a rule as such?
No, there is no rule like that. The question we should be asking is a little different question. And we were faced with it, I think, this business meeting. When the Sunday meeting question came up, what happened? It was somebody's idea that let's have a meeting on Sundays. Good idea. But then what happened? We could not find anybody to take up the service position. So it was not a good idea. So when somebody wants to start, so how does one start an AA group? It says very clearly in the book, any 2 alcoholics who say that they are Alcoholics Anonymous are free to start their meetings and call themselves an AA group. There is no rule at all. Anybody can start an AA group. But that those 2 alcoholics would have made a commitment. The commitment would have been, hey, let's say it is Ajay and Shankar. Ajay, let's start the Sunday meeting again. Acha, Sun, you chair the meeting and I will be the secretary of the meeting. Or you chair the meeting and I will be the treasurer of the meeting and the literature secretary of the meeting. Let's 2 of us start this meeting. And as people come, 1 month, 2 months down the line, we will have another business meeting and we will invite people to take up other service positions. That's how our meeting will grow. It doesn't start by Harish and Noel saying, hey guys, we should have the Sunday meeting also started. Oh, we need service positions for that. And obviously nobody raised their hands because it didn't come from them. So if Harish and Noel want to start a meeting, they have to make the commitment. So that's what the example you were giving about 311 meeting. If there are 4 people sitting there and struggling to make 1 meeting going, they do not have the capacity to start 4 meetings, even if they want to. Because the first question to ask is, who will open the meeting? Who will chair the meeting? And if they don't find a person, they should not open that meeting. We should open meetings only when we have the sustainability capacity. Otherwise, to open a meeting and close a meeting is not very nice. It is in fact avoidable. There is no rule against it, but it is best not to do it. It is one of the reasons why groups, intergroups, or world services do not list your group till you have able to demonstrate at least 3 months of operations, 3 months of sustained meetings. They don't even recognize you. So that's one of the reasons groups, everybody enthusiastically, resentment, 2 people have a resentment, start a new group. That's happened many times. History is full of that. And that can be good. But, service positions are the first criteria for a group. Otherwise, it will not sustain, which is what happened with us on Sunday.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right.
Thanks, man. Great.
What else can we talk about? I think it's time. Let's talk a little bit around business meetings. I think it's something that we all felt we could do better at. And since we are in the home group and we're talking about business meetings and we're talking about service positions, you know, so the two other important service positions in a group are the GSR, and there's a nice booklet for the GSR. So this is something that I think every GSR should definitely read and keep and familiarize themselves with. Just 1 minute. The GSR. It outlines everything for the GSR, what your roles are, what your responsibilities are. So please, as a GSR and all GSR, yourself familiar with your syllabus. And I can send it, you'll find it online. I'm sure we can find a copy of this. Similarly for the group treasurer, he's the custodian of our funds. He's the money man. He needs to have strong sobriety, and he needs to be a person who takes care of our money. A very valuable position. And we need to keep, you know, our Norbert also should be aware about it. He should know what he is supposed to do, what he cannot do, how he is supposed to take care of our money. So chairperson, secretary is a rolled in position. I don't think we need to change that from our point of view at this point in time, just my opinion. GSR, all GSR who steps into the position of the GSR. Again, we have to probably make a little clear here. The alt GSR is not assistant GSR. He shadows the GSR to learn from the GSR. He covers for the GSR, but he is not his assistant. So he doesn't do his job. So the GSR actually is supposed to do his own job. And when he cannot, or he's missing, or he's absent, he passes it on to the alt treasurer. And the alt treasurer attends with him, shadows him, and then takes over from him. Sorry, Noel, you got to do some more work here.
No, sorry to interrupt. I'm training him because next time I'm going out, so he's going to take over. That was a training period.
Got it. Principle of rotation, very valuable. We cannot hold on to our positions, whatever our term is. And usually it is a 6-month to a 1-year term. Unless, of course, it's a structured service, longer position, 2-year delegate or a 4-year term, that's different. But in the case of group positions, they should not exceed more than 1 year, ideally 6 months. Especially in our group, Road to Sobriety group, we have so many members, we must rotate out. And, you know, we had, you know, David did a great job, but David was secretary for I don't know how many years, 5 years or 4 years. And every time somebody would, he wanted to step away, but somebody would say, hey, listen, we haven't found somebody. Please stay on till we find somebody. That doesn't work anyway. We need to let him go, and then somebody will step in. So, you know, we must keep that in mind for all our positions. And as it says out here, it can be hard because we believe we are doing a great job, you know, and even our friends agree, and David was doing a great job. But it is a sense of spiritual sense and spiritual anonymity that we must let this part go and give others a chance. It talks about leaders here. We need leaders. If you read the tradition, it says, our leaders are but trusted servants, they do not govern. So if somebody tells us there are no leaders in AA, that's not right. Leadership is very vital. In fact, one of our concept talks about leadership, and it encourages leadership, because without it, things would not get done. But how that leadership is done, how that service is delivered is very clearly outlined. What are the characteristics of a good leader are written out here. So we must go by that, and we must check each other. Sometimes we get carried away, and we must find a way to keep ourselves within that humble framework of leadership is very valuable. But at the end of the day, we are trusted servants. We do not govern. So we have to follow the group conscience, and we should seek group conscience. There are some very interesting discussions that can happen around the concepts 3, 4, and 5, which are basically around, and I'm going back to these again and again. They talk about the right of decision, the right of participation, and the right of appeal. So there are ways that interpret, I am authorized to do this, and I have been given the responsibility to do this, so therefore I took a decision. Nothing wrong with that. But there are sometimes in the fine print, there are some very nice things written out there. Check again and again if that is actually what you have been given that authority for. Then there is the right of participation, which says no member can be denied anything. If he wants to participate and say, especially minority voice, just because we have reached a majority and group conscience is going one way, the minority voice is a very vital piece of spiritual voice that comes in, that we must listen to, because sometimes it is the voice of God, sometimes they say, because we are dominating personalities, we are strong personalities, some of us, and we can carry a majority with us, but there might be just that one guy sitting quietly who feels differently, and it might be the right thing to do. So we must invite always the minority voice to speak up, even if we see everything going in one direction. And then the right to appeal. The right to appeal is, if any member of a service body sees that there is something going wrong, he has the right to appeal and bring it to the next level of service. If not their next level of service, if not their next level of service. So there is a place where every member can question anybody inside AA. Of course, it should not be done with malice to stop the work of AA. It should be done if there's a genuine grievance. So these are concepts that are spiritual concepts that have been outlined in our service manual, which define boundaries, which define ways of working between service bodies and individuals and groups. And it's a fascinating world out there. Only by diving into it and learning from mistakes that we will learn how to learn and see what is the right thing to do out here. For me, always it is about group conscience. No matter how many years of experience and knowledge and wisdom I have, and I've done this 20 times before, if the group conscience is something else, then that is the answer at that point. And the about group conscience is not that, okay, let's do that because you guys agree and I don't agree. The thing about group conscience is that once group conscience has been decided, I have to now support it. It is my group's group conscience. I cannot say, okay, you guys decided to do this, so I'm not participating in it anymore. That's like sulking. That's crazy. So that is the true nature of a group conscience, that we really have to then support it, even though it went against what I thought. There's a question from somebody here. Bijay, yeah?
Hi, Ganal. Bijay Alcoholic. See, a question about group conscience. You see, what is this group conscience about? What it is? And when it comes to a voting, a group conscience can be done over the simple majority, or it should be reconsider to all the members when it should be agree with that regarding any decision.
Good. Okay, here is what is, so if you look at the screen, that's what a group conscience is. It is the collective conscience of the group membership, and thus represents substantial unanimity on an issue before definitive action is taken. So the key word out here is substantial unanimity. If you want it in numbers, we are at least looking at 2/3, sometimes even 90%. 9 out of 10 people should agree on one thing. Now, on an issue, now everything is not an issue. Some things do not require us to have time-consuming deliberation and discussion and debate on everything to reach substantial unanimity. Matters of importance and sensitivity have to be discussed slowly and deliberately, is what AA advises. So it's again subjective, but for example, things related to money should be done with substantial unanimity. Things related to structural changes should be done with substantial unanimity. Things related to resignations and removing somebody from office should definitely be done by substantial unanimity. But things like changing the timing of the meeting could be done by simple majority. Again, I don't know, maybe that's a damn important issue, because then half the people may not be able to come for the meeting. So maybe I'm wrong. So I think we have to go case by case. And this is where experience of some people who have been in service long enough or been in group related areas long enough, they can bring in their whole thing.
So there are two questions, Kunal.
Thank you, Kunal.
There's another, let me just complete one more thing. Another thing about group conscience, we forget to use the word informed. Informed group conscience. Do not take a group conscience, do not do a voting before full information on the matter has been presented to the group for complete understanding. And that therefore requires debate and discussion, and allowing the minority voice to sometimes be heard, some information to be researched. Sometimes an important matter, the group says, I don't think we know enough about this matter. Let's do one thing. Noel Praveen, Oscar, and Harish, can we request you guys, since you seem to be very interested in this matter, can we request you guys to set up a steering committee and just go into a research and discussion mode and come back to us next month with a recommendation which we can talk about, present more information to us. So that's another thing that sometimes happens. We do not have to take decisions like that. We can deliberate, we can get some people who are more qualified and ask them for an opinion, and so on and so forth. So that's when we do group conscience. So be fully informed. And as it says on the slide here, on sensitive issues, the group works slowly, discouraging formal motions until a clear sense of its emerges. So let's not, especially when it is sensitive issues. Now, what is a sensitive issue? Now, that we can again talk about. So, sorry, I interrupted somebody.
Yeah, so there are two questions. One, Oscar wants to know, can he change the group conscious if he was not present during the meeting when the conscious was done? And then after that, Chandra would like to add something on the group conscious.
Chandra wanted to add something on group conscious. So let's ask Chandra to add. Maybe he will answer Oscar's question. Go ahead, Chandra.
No, Chandra again. Yeah, because in your screen it was there. It is said well-informed group conscious. That is what needed. And what I came to know or understand is that don't take any hasty decision, because in 1 hour don't take. If a minority has some voice, if a motion has come, let us go one more round of discussion. Sometimes the voting pattern will change because it is not well informed. So these should not take a hasty decision on sensitive issues on the same day itself. Let us postpone to next group conscious meeting or what it is. That is what we do here in our Kovalam meetings. Thank you.
Okay, let Bertie come in, then we'll try to answer Oscar's question. Go ahead, Bertie.
I think Guru is there first.
Okay, Guru.
What happened?
Guru,
Nothing.
ask your question.
We can hear you.
No, I have no questions. I have no questions.
You raised your hand.
I'm
Go ahead. Probably. It probably happened accidentally. I did not.
Santosh, correct?
After Bertie, Santosh.
Okay.
Bertie, alcoholic. Talking about group conscience and substantial majority, yes, 2/3 is generally what groups keep it. This is one thing which we as a group, I thought it's necessary to carry on. We do not follow this. And so far we have never followed minority voice also. What Chandra mentioned, that's a very valid point. We just cannot take decision in the first meeting when the subject has come up, because some subjects require discussions. That is why many groups keep their group conscience meeting for a longer period of time. Or there are groups which have it once in a week also. So this informed business is very, very important, because at times most people are not even informed about the whole thing and the implications of the issues and everything. But this,
okay,
and coming one more thing, many groups do not go into minority voice, because only for one reason, that they cannot cover in the given time all the points which they have. But at times, if it is necessary, that particular thing can be set aside, as Chandra said, and carried on to the next meeting. Yes, coming, Chandra.
So we'll talk a little bit about agenda and motion.
Yeah, but
and
sorry,
business agenda. So before that, Oscar.
Kunal, this has not answered Oscar's question, that can the group conscious
be
reversed?
I know. Let him ask first. Oscar, go ahead.
My name is Oscar and I'm an alcoholic. You see, talking about R2S group in particular, there is an agenda set up for a business meeting, correct? And that agenda is being circulated. There is the first Wednesday of every month for people to be present at the business meeting. Nobody will show up for months together. Maybe there are 2 or 3 members. And when a group conscience is taken, after a couple of months, some members will find it, oh, that's not right, let's change this, let's do this. So what's the norm behind it? Can people change the group conscience? That's my first question. The second thing is, I would suggest for the next, business meeting of ours, we should have all these business meetings on Zoom probably, so that everybody can be present at a business meeting, and a group conscience can be taken over Zoom. Thank you.
So the simple answer to your question, Oscar, is nobody can change the group conscience. Only the group can change the group conscience. So only thing that will change a previously taken group conscience is another group conscience. And if in this case, it turns out to be a better informed, more well-researched group conscience, then it will change. If it is just somebody who wants him to, hey, I was not at the last meeting and I think there is something wrong with this group conscience. I have something serious objection to this. He may be heard if it is on the agenda, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on. We just don't give the floor just because somebody has an objection. Then he will be overruled and it will be okay. The group conscience will stand. So I hope that answers that question, that it is not an individual who can change a group conscience, no matter who he is. Santosh, sorry, I missed you in the middle. What was your question or comment?
Yeah, my Santosh and alcoholic, almost similar to Mr. Oscar. What my question is, are we documenting the minutes of the meeting for future reference, or any handover or something like that, or just leave it like that? Because in future, somebody is telling that, okay, this was the group conscious. Do we have a documented minutes of the meeting for future reference? Okay, this was the group conscious that time.
We have.
Very good question. We have been very careless in the past, and from now on, we have Harish in charge, and he's going to take care of everything.
Kunal, there is
I'd like to, sorry.
There is a comment here from, one second, Tina. Tina, 1 second. Ian, your point very valid here.
Yes.
Thank you for that comment. You are quite right. There's a 16-page booklet called 16, I think it's 50 page or whatever. It's a lovely booklet called The Home Group, where it all begins. I think all of us as part of one home group should just take half an hour to kind of flip through it, go through it, read it, and familiarize ourselves with the contents of that booklet, pamphlet. It's very useful to us as a home group members. Thanks for reminding us that. Yeah, Tina.
I just wanted to say, at least till the lockdown is down, can we have the business meetings on Zoom so that we can all participate and learn a little more about? Oh.
We've already been doing that. Last 3 meetings have been on Zoom.
Kunal, Praveen here. Can I come in?
Yes, Praveen, of course.
Yeah, I just want to, just my thoughts around the discussion we're having. What I've learned so far in in my entire time being sober is AA did not be organized, and we did not try and get things very formal. But what I feel right now in the discussions, we are trying to get a lot of new rules, new regulations, and trying to formalize a lot of stuff. So, do you think it's right for us? Like, we're talking of documenting minutes for proof and documenting stuff. Now, 15 years I've been in AA around and been part of several groups. We've been very informal, very, very vocal, very trustworthy. We believe the leaders and service positions. So are we trying to change things here or bring something new around UAE and specifically R2S?
So again, good question. And I would urge you to look at the tradition in a different context. So when we say in our traditions that AA is never to be organized, it doesn't mean we are disorganized or we don't keep record of our business meetings and all that. In fact, it's good practice across all functional and long-standing groups who follow the business meetings and who are active in service, that they maintain a record of their business meetings, not because we don't trust, because we forget. Because we are careless. We just sometimes, we made a decision and we forgot what was the actual decision. And unless we have some record, we sometimes fail to progress forward. But you're right. I mean, we don't have to constrain ourselves with, proof or of that sort. I wanted to add something else as we were speaking. Also, I don't think anywhere recommends rules and regulations. We do not do that. but guidelines for sure. I mean, we have many, many guidelines. Guidelines are not rules. Guidelines are like the two guidelines, stay within that. Entire flexibility. You have the entire flexibility to be autonomous and work with trust, faith, and good group conscience, and good purpose, spiritual purpose within the guidelines. But those guidelines serve a purpose. Outside those guidelines, experience of history tells us mistakes happen. We fail to fulfill our primary purpose. And sometimes we get distracted by all the things that most AA guys suffer from: pomp, ego, grandiosity, personal. I'm not saying necessarily. We don't even realize it sometimes. We are delusional also. So that's why these guidelines are useful. Yeah, sure.
Kunal, I completely agree. You've got guidelines, but somehow I get the feeling is we are trying to be perfect over here. We are trying to be a perfect AA group. The R2S with so many things, and that's where I have a bit of a difference in the way we are looking at stuff. Because I was always told to keep it very simple. We are a bunch of alcoholics. The more rules, regulations, and organization you bring around this whole thing, we are going to mess it up. So the thing is, what are we aiming for? Are we aiming for perfection, which I think should not be the key here? It should just be something simple. We are alcoholics. We will never be perfect. We are always going to have our own differences and ideas. That's where we come from, and we respect each other.
Okay. All right, no problem. So let's take that forward and move ahead. And the purpose of this workshop is to share with each other service experience and how things are being done in different parts and different. We are not talking for Road to Sobriety group here. This is not a Road to Sobriety business meeting at all. We are just, those of us who are from the Road to Sobriety group may relate to it, may take what they like from it, take it into the business meetings, bring it up there. This is not a business meeting for Road to Sobriety group. We are just sharing some best practices, some experiences around what is happening. And everything that I have put on the slides is not created by me. These are from published AA literature, word to word. It's cut and paste. It's not written by me at all, or anybody for that matter. This is conference approved literature or information and knowledge and guidelines being published. So let's go with that and move forward, okay?
Kunal, can I just
add, take your point, yeah.
Can I just add, Tina just mentioned that we should have business meetings on Zoom,
Ian here.
Which you answered that. I just would like to add here for Tina's knowledge. Tina, we have an R2S business group, and we had announced people interested in business matters should join the R2S business group. So anybody wanting to be part of the business, please join that WhatsApp group so that all matters are discussed in that. Thank you very much. And there's a question from Oscar.
I think Ian wants to say something. Tell me, Ian. We can hear you. You're unmuted. Ian, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the booklet, and I understand the group consciousness that the AA isn't about being formal and organized beyond an acceptable level, but the role of the secretary of the group is specified in the AA guidance as somebody who also maintains minutes of business meetings. So where there are decisions made, the secretary of the group would maintain that record, just so if anybody disagreed. And there's other things like obviously groups of the group membership and telephone numbers and things like that. But yeah, the maintain minutes of business meetings is definitely one of the recommendations from the AA guidance.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, let's take a little bit, talk a little bit around, and again, please, we are not trying to put too many rules and regulations here. We're just trying to make things a little bit more meaningful, effective, less conflict driven sometimes. And I think this workshop was driven by a need that came up from our personal experiences. So let's look at what things happen usually and how some of these group conscience matters can be resolved. What is the minority voice and so on and so forth. So typically a business meeting would have an agenda, and an agenda would consist of matters that have been carried over from the previous business meeting, which are called old matters or old business, unfinished, undiscussed meeting minutes, which have been which have come into the agenda in some way or the other from previous meetings. There are some standard aspects of a business meeting. You have your roll call, you take your previous minutes meeting, you do a quick summary of that. Usually the secretary or the chair would quickly summarize the minutes of the previous month's meeting and say, hey guys, everybody okay with it? Any objections or any thoughts? If this process has been completed online before, that's great. You don't have to waste time on it then. You would already have all of the previous month's meeting on your WhatsApp group if you have such a thing. But some people may insist, no, it should be validated and approved at the next business meeting. And that's fine too. You can take 5 minutes on it, no problem. So once the previous month's minutes are approved or not, somebody may say, hey, that was wrong. If everybody in the group agrees, yes, actually that minutes of the meeting are not showing it correctly. Mr. Secretary, please amend the minutes of the meeting for the next meeting, then we will approve it. So the minutes can then remain unapproved or conditionally approved based upon what was not agreed upon. Yeah, so that takes care of the previous month's minutes. A roll call takes place, who's there, who's not there, just to make sure that we have home group members who have voting eligibility and voting rights. Some meetings have guidelines on who can vote and when they can vote. So what we have recently agreed on is that if you are a home group member, that's great, you're welcome, but please attend at least 2 meetings before you vote, so that we know your consistency and your commitment to our home group. Otherwise, we have all those situations which were earlier being discussed. So that's something that you might want to check that, okay, and then the secretary knows, okay, there are 8 people in the room who can vote, and we should just quickly, frequency of business meetings is usually once a month. That's usually a prescribed one. It can be less, it can be once in 3 months, but once a month is good. Then the treasurer's report is usually presented. It talks about what we talk about: rent, costs, tea, coffee, literature costs, other expenses, etc. Any donations to Intergroup or to the service structure, that's quickly done with. And so the money thing is gotten out. You have to keep a prudent reserve. That's something that we'll talk about later, but something that the group should keep maintaining as a base security fund so that we don't run out of money. It's very important that the group always operates, because after all, we have a primary purpose. We have to keep the meeting doors open. We should never run into a position we do not have money for rent and have to leave, or we do not have money to buy books and give to a newcomer, or we don't have money to buy pamphlets and give to a newcomer. So that's the primary purpose of the group, is to carry the message to the still suffering alcoholic. So everything is secondary after that. So coming back to the old business. So usually the protocol is, first you deal with old business, and over the few days before the meeting, some new agenda items might have been introduced into the agenda. So first you deal with old business, finish your discussions, do your voting, make your motions, make your decisions, lock it up, minute it, close it, and then talk about the new business meetings, new matters. Now, there are various ways to do this. Some people, some groups which are less formal and would like to keep it less formal might say, anybody can make a motion, anybody can introduce an agenda item into the agenda, like we have been doing. Like Noel says, I think we should have international speakers in our Sunday meeting. I would like this to be discussed. Please put it on the agenda. Harish says, I think we should have 90-minute meetings instead of 60-minute meetings for the Wednesday meeting or whatever meeting. Please introduce it in the agenda. Without objection, the secretary starts adding the agenda items into the agenda, makes a list in the order that they appear in, because that's fair. And it becomes the matter for the business to discuss. Then there is the other way, because this could lead to, especially if you are a big group and you're very active and you have many members with many ideas, it can become a little chaotic. So then somebody will say, no, if you want to introduce an agenda item into the agenda, it has to be seconded. That means you have to have at least one other person who agrees with you, yes, I would like to discuss this also. So if Harish says, let's make it 90 minutes, Rajesh should say, yes, I second that motion. Or at least I second the introduction of that into the agenda. So we don't probably need to reach that yet. We are pretty simple and we don't have too much to discuss, but things are getting a little heated nowadays. In the sense, we got lots of things to talk about. So obviously, think about that. Now, so let's say there's an agenda item on the table talking about, let's do a workshop on traditions. the first thing to reach a group conscience is there has to be a motion. So the motion, for example, would be, I make a motion that we hold a traditions workshop on the second Friday, 2 Fridays from now. It's a motion. It's a request for an action and a decision. It should not be, for example, let's have a traditions workshop. That's very open-ended. The answer to that can never be no. You know what I mean? Yeah, sure, let's have a traditions workshop. Who will have an objection to that? But it has to be a little bit more specific. Let's have a traditions workshop with an outside speaker on this day at that time for 2 hours, and we will, it becomes a more specific thing that we can think about and talk about. Then the chairperson should invite a discussion around it. Okay, let's talk about it. Who is usually the person who makes the motion is given the first opportunity to talk. He's the one who's presenting the plan, the agenda item. So let him have the chair. Give him 3 to 5 minutes to talk about what his plan is. Then everybody, so here's the chairperson's job really. The chairperson should now be able to invite and sense what's going on. Is this a great idea? Everybody seems to be agreeing, nodding their heads, saying, yeah, good, let's do it. Then you can quickly take a motion and say, hey, so are we all agreed? Let's take a show of hands, a spirit in the room. What's the scene? No problem. Pass the motion. Get it done with, move on to the next. But in case there is an objection and somebody says, no, we can't do that. We just did one, or they are doing, that other group is doing, or by the way, this timing is wrong. And why are we getting somebody from outside? So now there's time for discussion. So then the chairperson's role is to invite discussion across the table and try to make it pro versus con, rather than pro and then con. So so somebody says, so Bertie introduces a plan, Hari says no. The third person who raises his hand, if he says, the chairperson could ask him, are you going to speak for or against? And if he says, I'm also against, then say, wait, hold on, there's already against. Anybody for? Anybody with Bertie to support it? And that way the discussion can be a little bit more healthy, more informative, new views can come out instead of it becoming and degenerating into an argument. So that's how a discussion is held. At a certain point in time, the chairperson needs to take a call and say, boss, guys, enough discussion. Time to vote. Is the motion still standing? You ask Bertie, are you still okay? Do you still want to go ahead with the motion? Or are you sensing, now here's everybody's group conscience, remember. Are you sensing that maybe the group is not with you here? Maybe you should take it 2 months later. So the person who has to be asked again, are you still willing to make your motion? And he says, yes, I think we should do it. In which case you can then say, shall we vote? And you can vote. Now, suppose it passes. Let's say everybody, or by a 2/3 majority also. Let's say, by significant unanimity or significant provision, the motion passes. But I, for example, say I have an opinion. I am a minority voice. I deserve to be heard. I have a strong reason for not doing this now. So the chairperson has to give me the option then. So I should then be allowed to speak. And again, I should be given a sufficient amount of time. 3 to 5 minutes is usually the time to speak and rest my case. And once I have been heard, once the minority voice has been heard, the chairperson should then invite the group in general saying, now that the minority voice has been heard, does anybody want to change their vote? And if you feel, or if somebody says, yeah, I think we should vote again, then the voting has to be done again. And it's quite possible the voting may change. Or if nobody says, no, actually, no, I don't think I need to vote again, it's fine. We are fine with the previous decision. Then you have to kindly inform the minority voice saying your voice has been heard, but I think the group's conscience stands and we'll move on to the next. So that's usually how important matters are debated, discussed, everybody gets a chance to share. And then finally a vote is taken, unanimity is seen, minority voice is heard if needed, and the motion is passed or not passed. Now, in this whole process, we have something called Robert's Rules of Conduct or Parliamentary Conduct, which is too much to get into sometimes, but last couple of times, I think it's just worthwhile remembering in very simple sense. Give 2 minutes to everybody around the table and do not allow any cross arguments to happen. Like, for example, Bertie has presented something, and then I come in with my opinion, and then Bertie doesn't like what I said. So Bertie starts talking to me, saying, no, Kunal, but that's not how it is done. No. All discussion in the table and on the motion should be addressed to the chairperson. So Bertie talks to the chairperson and the group. I speak to the chairperson and the group. Chandra speaks to the chairperson and the group. So it's neutral. No personalities are involved. It should not get personal. It should be issue-based and principle-based. It should not be, I think Kunal wants to be chairperson for the rest of his life. That's personal, and that's not right. But if somebody says, I think we should invest in more traditions workshops, even if we did one last year, that's principles and that's issues, and that's fine. So that's why the role of the chairperson during these kind of meetings is vital. And you need to have a control of the group. And you are not putting rules in place. You are making it a common field of discussion for everybody. Everybody will feel fair, instead of some people feeling as if they were, shouted out of the whole situation. And that should never happen. So I don't want to get too much into this Robert's rules things, but just to get a sense that everybody should be given a chance. Nobody should fight between each other. Personalities and name calling should certainly be did, and principles and issues. And at one point in time, discussion should be stopped and a vote should be taken or postponed. And say, look, it's very clear. We are not an agreement here. As we talked earlier a little about sensitive matters, we move slowly. Do not move in haste. Leave it. It's obviously not something that the group wants to decide on today. So we do not have to be in a rush to vote, and so on and so forth. Any comments, any thoughts?
How long is this going to continue? Because it's been 3 hours. Do we have to take a break, or do you want to do it another time?
I think we can. I think we can. So I think this part of this thing has been covered here. Now, let's close here, I think, and we can probably take 10-15 minutes to just bring in some closing comments in events if we have.
So before you go into the closing comments, there were 2 questions which will remain unanswered. One, I think you partly answered for Oscar. His question was, when one asks a question, there could be a genuine reason for asking the question, or it could be to sincerely start a discussion. Should a minority voice be heard, or can leaders override it? You already answered the minority voice part, I think. Can leaders override it is the second part of the question.
No, nobody can override it. Only group conscience can override it.
And Bijoy has a question: what should be the frequency?
And on that, I think there's a wonderful protocol we should set for ourselves. Let the so-called leaders or so-called people with experience or so-called people like who seem to know a little bit more about service, let them be the ones who speak last in a discussion. Because that's the only way to make sure that those who want to say something and coming from somewhere else get a chance with an open mind, and everybody gets a chance to express themselves without listening to somebody who's, coming from a dominating position and with some experience behind him, and it sounds as if he's right all the time, and it becoming the group thought rather than individual thought. So this is one of the things mature groups do, that people who have experience, they wait. They don't jump into the discussion first thing saying this is how it should be done. They wait till everybody has finished and then add their thing, so that the voting can be done on an informed basis then. So that's one way of safeguarding everybody's voice.
Bijoy's question is, what should be the frequency of business meetings? Is it mandatory? A business meeting should be there in every group.
Yes, it is. Mandatory is not a word we use in AA, but yes, I mean, definitely. Otherwise, how will you decide what to do with your money? How will you elect your trusted servants? How will you decide whether who is going to chair the meeting? Yes, business meeting is absolutely required. It's very, very important. Without it, a group cannot function, basically. It will be chaos. So yeah, and typically a monthly meeting is recommended. There are some groups who meet once in 3 months, but I would not recommend it.
Okay, no more questions, Kunal, from anywhere on the chat.
Okay, let me close the sharing. I have, if you guys are still keen and interested and we believe this is effective, we can have another session maybe a week down the line. And there is some interesting thoughts on, one thing I did not cover at all today was guidelines. So there is a lot of guidelines for public information, a lot of guidelines for hospital institutions, 7 tradition, and so on and so forth. And it's important for us to know that because we want to, after all, the whole idea of doing this is to get into service. We also need to talk a little bit about the concepts and warranties that we have, which we can save for another day. Yeah, Tina?
Yes, I would suggest that we have another session, maybe next Friday, same time, because I'm going up back and forth. My grandchild, the kids have gone out for dinner and I'm babysitting and I don't want to miss this. But
so we'll discuss that on the WhatsApp group and see how we can come up with a time and a plan on that. Okay, anybody else with some?
Yeah, I have one question on the voting you said. You just said that at least a person should be attending 2 business meetings and then he should be allowed to vote in the group conscious. My question is that these 2 meetings have to be the previous 2 business meetings, or it can be that somebody attended 2 meetings and did not show up for 3 months and then he comes in and he can vote for a group conscious.
Again, so, a matter of guidelines. Sometimes they say if you miss 2 meetings in a row, then it disqualifies you again. So that's again a matter that the group can decide.
So can we have some guidelines for our home group to be, so that all of us can have one understanding about everything? Because I agree with Praveen 100% when he says we are not trying to organize things to create a confusion. No, just for a simple understanding to keep it simple for everybody.
Definitely, the group should have fully documented guidelines. There are enough guidelines available worldwide that we can take from, customize, cut out from, use a little bit, not a job. But again, it has to be done as a kind of something that is done by a group of people who are mandated to do this so that it doesn't become a one-person job. So let's bring it up in the business meeting and say, hey, there's a plan. Would somebody like to volunteer to be a little task force or a little committee who can get together and create guidelines for our group, present it back to the business meeting that we can all discuss, approve, and then we will adopt them. So that's how I would recommend doing it. But I completely believe it's important to be done. All right. If there are no more questions or comments, then let's take a minute to thank you very much again, guys, for giving me that opportunity and your patience and your lovely interaction. This has just made it so useful for, I think, all of us. Really enjoyed that myself. I hope you guys got something out of it. And let's close the meeting with the serenity prayer and
thank you,
see you soon.
Thanks, Kunal. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kunal.
We didn't know, so
wonderful.
Thank you, guys. All right, guys. God, serenity,
grant us the certainty,
the things we cannot
so the things I cannot
courage
change,
to change the things
and courage
we
to
can,
change things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
All right. Good night, guys. Bye-bye.
Good night, Kunal.
Thank you, Kunal. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. My pleasure.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Is Praveen is there? Praveen?
Why all want Praveen here? I am here. Tell me, what's your problem?
No. Praveen asked whether it is organized. I will teach him whether it is organized or
not.
Yeah,
Chandra, I'm here.
I will organize Praveen. Don't you worry. Praveen needs to be organized. His life is in a mess. I'm organizing his life. He's talking about organizing this meeting.
Good.
I will teach him.
Listening well. I didn't know he's there.
Sorry?
Oh God. I didn't know he's there. I thought he's gone. So I was just trying to talk to Chandra, you see. Listening to what I'm saying.
Hey, Chandra, how are you?
I'm good, man. Smoking. Let me smoke one cigarette, man.
He's in the bathroom.
No, I'm in the balcony, man. In the balcony.